podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, the Joyful Sales Queen, and today I'm joined by our special guest, Dennis Mellon. And today we're going to be talking about how positive leadership keeps morale high in turbulent times. Businesses today are facing more challenges and uncertainty than ever before. With all these struggles, maintaining high morale among your employees and your team members is absolutely vital. Our conversation today will give you the tools you need to deploy positive leadership to keep your team motivated. And I would love to invite you to subscribe, because if you get a ton out of value out of this episode, it costs nothing to subscribe. And you'll hear that I've got a bit of a cold, so bear with me. Dennis, I want to tell you about Dennis because he is amazing. I'm so glad that Dennis and I have connected and met. But he brings years of leadership experience as a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, a 28-year retired Alaska Airlines fleet captain in charge of 650 pilots and 40 instructors. And let's not stop there, a best-selling author. He is an internationally recognized speaker, best-selling author, executive leadership coach, and certified athletic mental performance master. What a mouthful. And a seasoned speaker. Dennis's goal is to bring education, inspiration, and entertainment to a variety of leaders looking to connect the culture with the vision. And Dennis, I am so thrilled to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Lynn, it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate that introduction. It's pretty flowery, a little embarrassing, but I will take it.
Well, it is absolutely impressive. And, let's just sort of dive in because you've made a transition from the Air Force to being a commercial pilot and now to your current role. And I'd love to hear about how that framed what you're doing now.
The whole thing started out when I was 10 years old, sitting at my father's Air Force base at the end of the runway, and I watched this F-4 Phantom take off in front of us in full afterburner. You know how you feel that in your chest when they go roaring by. I turned to my dad and I was pumping my fist. I said, "Dad, that's what I want to do when I grow up." Of course, my wife says I haven't reached that point yet, but yeah, we're still working on that. But I had a singleness and purpose. I wanted to be a professional pilot, either in the Air Force or commercially. And I was able to do them side by side for a number of years as I transitioned from the Air Force Reserves simultaneously with Alaska Airlines. So that was a busy time for us. We ended up having 4 kids, 4 boys at the time. So I have to give a shout out to my wife for all the things that she put up with when I was gone on trips and things. But that's kind of how I got started anyway.
And then how did that transition to what you're doing now?
Well, unfortunately, my career got cut short at 56. I was out mountain bike riding east of Seattle in the foothills of the Cascades out there. Um, I picked out a trail this one day, and the trail guide listed as IAB, which is it stood for well, you can imagine what the B word was, but anyway, it was described as a 500-foot climb with a bunch of switchbacks within about a mile through 150-foot tall Douglas firs over tree stumps and bushes and things like that. And about halfway up that hill that day, I started thinking, boy, I really picked a good one today. A few moments later, I'm unconscious on the trail.
Oh,
Luckily, and it's a remote trail out east of Carnation, out in east of Seattle. Luckily, 2 hikers happened upon me, and so the story goes from there. And I cover that in my book a little bit, but yeah, that's the gist of it. That ended up being I like to think of it as, 18-year-olds when they're in high school, a lot of times they're, what do I do now? Well, I had a singleness and purpose since 10 years old. And then at 56, I'm the 18-year-old looking at now, what do I do? I'm probably too old to start a big career. And so I looked into doing some things like speaking and workshops and talking about leadership. That's a mouthful. I'm kind of hogging the conversation here. You probably have more questions.
Well, absolutely. But that's a great pivot point. And then reinventing yourself and leveraging all the experience that you had from your previous two careers. So let's sort of dive into positive leadership and really how it can keep morale high among team members.
Well, a lot of times people look at the performance of their company, of their team, of the group they're working with hard data. Um, but what people don't realize is that if you have disengaged employees, they're costing you about 18% of your payroll in lost performance. That's from a Harvard Business Review survey. And to recover that is pretty easy, but it doesn't show up on a financial statement. It might show up indirectly as, I don't know, absenteeism, turnover rates, retraining costs. But the actual feeling when you walk into a place where you can feel what the culture is like, when people are there, I get to go to work instead of I have to go to work, is one feeling you get at one place. And another place is I'm doing the minimum. I'm doing exactly what's in my job description and nothing more. Well, that's okay too, but what if you could inspire them? And that comes directly from your leadership.
Yeah. Well, and I believe that engaged workforce, they also are more productive, and they are actually really thinking about the company and they're bringing things up that they see that could be improved. They are, being that proactive. And so there's a lot of benefits of having that workforce truly engaged. And so what challenges do people face when implementing a positive leadership and creating this environment and culture in turbulent times?
Well, nobody likes change, but nothing happens until you get into that uncomfortable realm. So, getting people to feel comfortable in uncomfortable situations is a key. We live business is this. I like to compare it to it's a roiling, boiling pot of water. There's nothing we can do about that. That's that proverbial volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity of business. But as leaders, if we can enter that water as like a tiny coffee bean and start spreading our influence of that water and converting other team members into coffee beans with the ultimate goal of we can't change the roiling and boiling, but we can change it into something that smells good and tastes good. Taking your team to that elite performance, to that gourmet coffee state is it's the very essence of being a leader. How do you get them inspired to do more than what's in their job description?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that analogy. As a coffee lover myself, and definitely good coffee. So
Yeah.
that's a great analogy. I love that, Dennis. So, talking about this from that bigger 60,000 foot, I don't know if you ever flew that high, but that big high level, and looking at it, why is positive leadership more important now than ever before?
Well, think of what's going on. I mean, there are problems that are constantly coming at us. Events. There's nothing we can do about that. But there's going to be an outcome, whether we do something or do nothing. There's still going to be an outcome. And the very essence of leadership is what we can do to alter, change, or affect that outcome, and to get the team to alter, change. And I like to use an analogy of there's a Navy SEAL acronym, DWI, and it's not driving while intoxicated by any means, but rather deal with it. And from their standpoint, it's oh no, we're surrounded by the enemy and we're running out of ammunition. Deal with it, because the alternative is we're going to be killed or captured. Now, hopefully, in people's businesses, that's not going to happen, but there are dire consequences. So if we can get that team to start thinking about what we can do, we're not going to stop the events coming at us. What can we do to change the outcome? What can we do to solve this problem? Are we open? Can we communicate with each other without intimidation or fear? I may have something that affects something that's in your department, but overall, it's going to be better for the overall mission, the overall goal of the team or the company. So I would come, hopefully, directly to you instead of me going to my boss going to your boss coming down. We're saving time just in being able to trust each other and letting you have a heads up on things.
Yeah. No, I
That's
agree.
the communications part, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at it that we're all in this together. We're all,
Right,
rowing in the same direction. And that a different perspective isn't wrong. It's just they're looking at it
right,
from a different prism. And there's a lot of value in that because you can find hidden risks that you weren't aware of.
right,
So I really like what you're saying, Dennis, because it's brilliant. And that's what's important. I mean, the risks are really great in business in the sense of either the business actually failing, which is
right.
horrible, making really bad mistakes that it causes layoffs that really hurts the business,
Well,
and they can
yeah,
be the
but that's on
opposite.
yeah, that's on that level, and hopefully your business isn't at that level. But what about that level where we're working on what's going on today and we're doing okay, but how do we get to that next level? How do we inspire our team to that next level? That's the
Right.
very essence of leadership, really. And
Yeah.
I think too often we rely on, well, a lot of companies pick their leaders based on their subject matter expertise or their seniority longevity. But it's a different skill set that actually needs to be developed, and being able to talk with people like you and exchanging ideas and finding out new ways of new perspectives, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's all the different layers in between, right? So,
Right,
and those businesses that are really engaging their workforce, they're um, actually having a lot more progress that's being made because people are actually invested in the business, the culture, and they have a mission,
right.
just like
Just
those
just
Navy
listening to you,
SEALs.
you've experienced it. I can tell.
Yeah, yeah, it makes a really big difference. So so looking at this from the opposite side of things, why is the role of positive leadership, so often ignored?
I don't think we spend enough time um, developing it. I like to when I talk to leaders about how their professional development programs start. I always start out with the premise that your next generation of leaders starts developing in the onboarding process when they're getting introduced to the culture,
Yeah,
and culture is the single biggest influencer to performance.
yeah,
You can look at the data, but that's history. What are you doing from today for? Well, how are you dealing with the new Gen Z and what are we calling now? Gen A's, Gen.
I don't know
I,
what's
I
after
can't
Gen
keep
Z.
up
I
with
really
this.
don't know
Yeah,
yet.
yeah. What are we doing to develop them for the next generation? It's successorship, really. If you want your business to be in long term, you're going to have to adapt to today, because what worked yesterday probably isn't going to work tomorrow. It has to be an evolving process. So when we start looking at leaders, are how much is it when I do these workshops? How much is this going to cost me? I said, this isn't a cost. This is an investment that'll pay dividends if you do more than you can't go in with a one and done.
Yeah,
We had a workshop last year. you know it's got to be a continuous process, whether you bring me in or whether you bring have periodic updates with your team, where you do offsite workshops within your team. Those are all continuous development, continuous improvement process,
yeah,
and that's essential. Look at it as an investment rather than a cost.
yeah. Because in the continuous improvement process, um, yeah, you can take a break. Okay, whew, but
Yeah,
then you got to restart because as soon as you get do one thing, now you've got a new baseline. And now
Right.
you can look what's the next step that
Right.
we can take, so that we can make additional improvement. So that is, I love that. So, what is something that our listeners can do today, so to either A, as leaders, use positive leadership to motivate their teams, but as team members, what can they do? I want to ask two questions. So this is a two-parter.
What can they do? Well, I like to, I have a, what I call my elite performance blueprint, and it has four uh, things that you can easily implement to start getting results. And they deal with communications, and there's actually a way of communicating, uh, some skills in there, or some tools in there that you can start using immediately for each one of these. But you need to build that communications channel with, where you get to know, like, and trust everybody within your group, and then from there, from communications, you get that uh, commitment, or I'm sorry, the connection first. You get the connection with them, and then the commitment, and then the caring. And once you get to that level where everybody's caring about each other, I'm not looking at it as like a Pollyanna. Oh, can't we all just get along? Lynn, if you're working for me or I'm working for you, we're going to hold each other accountable. Hey, this was due, or and we have to be able to have those positive, purposeful, productive conversations that are so essential to even a minimal performance. We have to be open to feedback. Too often we shut feedback down, or somebody brought this up and it made me look back, I'm going to get back at them. We need to eliminate that, because if I give you feedback, it's my suggestion, it's my shortcut to help you be successful, or to help us to be successful.
Yeah,
So, communications, connection, commitment, and caring are all essential part of that performance.
I
I
love
hope that
that.
answers the question.
It does. It does.
Okay.
And I want to add one little tidbit, which is from my own experience, is that there's times where there's someone you really don't like. I mean, it's just, oil and water, whatever. But what my advice is to see the good in the other person.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
always something. So there was someone that but he was such a great dad and a great son that I really admired that about him. And so I looked for the good so that I could work more effectively with him,
Yeah.
because, we just really rubbed against each other. And so when I would remind myself that there was good in him, and
Yeah.
so if I looked for the good to be able to work more effectively with him, and it's something that I've used when I'm in those situations, because there is good in, well, most people.
Yeah.
There's probably a few that I wouldn't put in that category, but they're few and far between. And
Yeah.
so you look for the good.
Yeah, there's two things that popped up into my mind. One is an acronym. Again, I'm big on acronyms, but whenever an interaction happens and you don't feel comfortable with it, you do an MRI scan, and that's not the medical one. It's the look at it, finding the most respected interpretation of what that person's trying to do and what the motivation is behind it. So scan that. But you also mentioned those people that are just hard to work with. The term we banter around is energy vampires, the people that come into a meeting and just suck the energy right out of the meeting. Well, if they're just coming in and complaining and don't have a solution, if they're giving feedback and there's no solution, then it's just mindless complaining, really. So our goal as leaders, or as a group, really, is to convert that energy vampire into somebody that is, you know, do we need naysayers in a meeting? Yes,
Yeah.
but they also have to be able to um, not do it mindlessly, but have provide a solution to what they're complaining about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't do that. We tried that before. That's a dumb idea. That's just sucking the energy out of it.
Yeah. Well, and
Why do
sometimes
we've
you weren't
tried
ready
this?
for that solution. That's why it didn't work. Well,
Yeah,
what did you
yeah,
learn from it? Because
yeah,
now we know
exactly.
these things and we know what not to do.
Yes, yeah, yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you there,
No, no,
Dennis, but
no. That's
I
it's
just
all
got so
part of the
like,
change.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's all part of the conversation. And sometimes things just need to come out, and you need to interrupt people, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
So, Dennis, as we wrap up today, is there anything you wish that I'd asked you that I have not?
We've covered a wide range of things today, and I just want to reemphasize uh, how important it is to be a positive leader and still hold people accountable. Not that Pollyanna-ish. Everything's fine, and you're hiding things, and oh, don't make Dennis or Lynn look bad. If it's going to look bad, but it contributes to the overall goal, then it's a good thing. That's why having a mission statement in front of people is so important. I think being a positive leader is what inspires teams to move to that next level, and that's the biggest message that I can give for positive leadership.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant. And Dennis, thank you so much for sharing how positive leadership keeps morale high in turbulent times. And I know our audience is going to want to know more about you and how they can connect with you. I'd love to have you share that.
Well, I'll go ahead and type in my email, um, and they can look at fullthrottleleadership.com is my website, and I do one-on-one coaching. I do speaking keynotes and workshops, and the whole purpose is not to bring out something that I have, but it's to solve your problems. And typically, I can find a way to adapt these to whoever I'm speaking to or presenting to. But I just put my email in the chat, and you've got my website. So that's one way of connecting me. And of course, LinkedIn and all the social media. I put out a weekly newsletter too that usually has some pretty good nuggets in it. At least that's what I'm hearing.
Well, that's wonderful. So, thank you so much, and to all of our listeners who joined us today, I'm so glad you joined us because this has been a really great conversation. I mean, we really went deep on this positive leadership. And Dennis, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it.
Lynn, I appreciate the opportunity, and I think this is a great media to present these ideas and exchange things back and forth. But so thanks very much for having me as a guest.
Bye, everyone.